So many clowns on my baby. Hello, everyone. This is Soraia Sakaido. Welcome. Today, I'm going to share a little bit about my story, as much as I can fit in today's video. And my hope and intention is for those of you who share similar stories or can find yourself in different parts of this story, a home in our collective and global cosmic heart. To know that you're not alone and that we are connected and we have a connection of many souls and many beings on this planet who have similar or parallel types of expressions, experiences, deep heart values, soul values, philosophy on life when it comes to aligning ourselves with our higher vision as an individual and as and for the collective. It's not easy to live in times like the times we live in, especially if we're feeling unstable ourselves. And this is why I want to share my story, because I felt unstable for a very long time. And there are still times, admittingly, that certain emotions and experiences of instability arises. But with the wisdom and the understandings, tools, and the teachings that I've both caught and were taught to me, personal practice that I had taken on for many years that still continue, of course, till this day, I definitely have grown leaps and bounds and have like a stronger rooting in who I am, a more intimate connection with my power, and a personal energetic sovereignty that continues to go through refinement, but that has landed in a lot more sovereignty than before. And the times where I didn't even have, claim of that. So where should I begin? Let's go back all the way to the beginning, shall we? I was a sensitive kid, like most children in general. But I came under the category of probably a lot of you who are watching this, extra sensitive or ultra sensitive child. And being born into a country at the time, Singapore, I was born into Singapore, and a culture and various institutions that didn't have the, available or easily accessible wisdom, guidance, tools, understanding when it came to insensitivity, when it came to teaching, being around, and simply being in service to, right? And seeing children in general, let alone children like myself and many of you. And so it was a very difficult, trying time growing up in these environments and institutions. So some of the things that I experienced as a HSP as a child growing up that continued into my teenage years and, as a woman were emotional, mental instability because of the volatility that I didn't understand how to protect myself from, how to separate myself from, how to create healthy, lines and boundaries with. Mental, emotional, psychic, interpersonal, sexual, energetic imbalances, interferences, extreme experiences, disharmony. right? Chaos, chaoticness. And the psychic interferences were a very big deal when I was growing up. I ended up being put in quite dangerous situations because of not understanding how to separate myself from the world of the unseen and the world of, like subtle energy as well, like interpersonally. And into my teenage years, this continued. And because of a lack of proper guidance or mentoring or, accessible information, or even the awareness that I could search out information that would be supportive for me, because I lacked the awareness because of the lack of education and guidance that, I was who I was. I had these, qualities that I had. And so without that self-awareness, I was a naive, sensitive, like young person. So this led to me trying to navigate the world of pain and suffering that I both experienced directly, witnessed, as well as an observer, and that I saw looking out into the world beyond the home, beyond myself, beyond my community, but even, just globally. The things that I would witness people in power and authority doing and saying, the decisions that they made, the way they carried themselves, not based on a preference thing, but based on you're doing harm to humanity with the power that you have. So it wasn't a case of, I don't like how this person, necessarily speaks because it's different from who I am, or, kind of like on a surface level, but more so like I have direct experience and understanding and knowing as a sensitive person, and just as a feeling human being, to know as a child and as a young person that these things like injustice and prejudice and racism and just derogatory shit that gets spread and perpetuated in the world, it just like, it ain't right. Without proper understanding how to create a healthy like line and boundary between myself and what I was experiencing directly and observing outside of myself, I internalized it. And then I fought it, got angry at the world, and I got very afraid. I got afraid without even knowing I was afraid. That would be the times I was just very angry. I didn't know I had a rage problem until probably my early 20s. I was sitting in prison at the age of probably about 23 years old. And I was attracting women, young women, who were kind of like the queen bees of their race. And that was kind of like, I think, the first meditation I actually held was just like in prison. It just happened. I didn't make it happen. Certain things had already revealed themselves to me and opened up in my life in a way where I began to explore and practice. And simply by resonance, people just came to me, and these three particular individuals and women, surrounded me. And they were filled with like rage, like scary rage. I remember thinking to myself, why am I surrounded by these particular like women? And I found out later, years later, that I had a huge problem with rage. And it was so deep and so hidden and so suppressed that I wasn't even accessing it. I wasn't externalizing it much. It was completely like it was eating me from the inside. And one of the things that was spurring my addiction that landed me in prison. And there's another story to that, but my intuition saved me. Prison was the lesser punishment. I had a divine intervention occur where I heard a voice in my ear audibly telling me what I needed to know. And it basically saved my life. So a couple of years later, after I came out from prison, I noticed that I had this feeling of this uncontrollable rage and fire inside of me. You know how people say they see red? I saw white. And whatever somebody else tried to do to pacify me, it just made everything worse. I had no understanding of how to transmute and alchemicalize this energy. And the same thing happened when my sexuality was ignited, in terms of it came back online in my body. And the precursor of that, the process of that, was my trauma came up to the surface first. And so again, there was a lot of fear, terror, anger that came up to the surface that had to be transmuted. And luckily at that time, I was being guided by my, what I call my spiritual entourage, you know, of guides, of benevolent like support and helpers. I was being led to different places and people, and my body was being moved in ways that showed me that I could actually transmute and alchemicalize this on my own. And that's what happened through my voice, through my movement, through ritualized expression. I use my body, my voice, my senses, my entire being, temple, vessel, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, just pointing towards the intention of like having healing and transformation and transmutation occur. And when I would dedicate myself that way, all of my energy and a lot of energy, right, would be shifted from the rage, the terror, the fear, the shrinking. Now it had this channel to move through with a very specific intention where I could creatively express myself, being a natural creative, always drawn to the arts, always drawn to music, always drawn to expressing myself and really needing that in my life, but using it in this context for healing was a very, very powerful, very, 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 very powerful like shift and change in how I started to use the energy that I have. A lot of energy goes into always being afraid, scared, and anxious, and looking over your shoulder, or pleasing other people, or, you know, pouring yourself and your efforts into being successful, you know, at your own demise, your own well-being just kind of being put on the back burner. A lot of effort goes into that, being in service to some kind of oppressive, invisible force and power in the world, in our minds, from our childhoods, invisible voices. A lot of energy goes into that. And this energy can be otherwise directed and channeled into methods of creation for healing. Yes, it can be directed into, you know, action in the world to move us forward, to build things in the world. And it can also be used for transfiguration, shifting of consciousness, uplifting of your own expansion of your own consciousness, healing deep wounds and patterns, stuck energy and stagnant emotions can be shifted, can be released and liberated. And to do so in a way that is not just kind of this cathartic show, but in a way that brings you into a space of completion, a space of completion where wisdom is extracted and you can use it in a practical manner in your life in terms of how can you actually be in better and right relationship with your mind, your heart, your voice, your sexuality, your sensuality, your energy, your choices, how you nourish yourself, how you are in relationship to everything in life is a relationship. And not in a way where you are just trying to create some kind of facade or maintain some kind of facade of control and reality that supports old societal expectations of success, of love, of freedom, but one that you are deeply and intimately connected to from a place of truth in this moment, truth that is aligned and unique to you as an individual on your unique path. And there is a deep sense of release and ability to rest in knowing that I might not be doing things perfectly. I might, not feel on top of everything all the time. And this is human and this is normal. But am I connected to my path? Am I deeply forgiving and compassionate to myself and others? Am I staying true to what I know to be true when it comes to my soul-led values, my soul-aligned values, and the way in which my soul is guiding me on my unique path? Am I playing myself? Am I cutting corners? Am I avoiding? Or am I choosing consciously, knowing that, okay, I have my strengths and my weaknesses, I have my limits and, my limitations. And I also have this part of me that is divine and unconditional and that can really go the distance. Am I able to bring both realities into greater harmony? Can I honor both my divinity and my soul self, as well as my body, my vitality, my energy as a human being? Can I honor my limitations as a human being, my preferences, my personality, my interests, my expression as a human being, my deeper needs as a physical being, an emotional being, and as a mental being? Can I fulfill, satisfy, and nourish my physicality as well as my spirituality and my soul self, my divinity? Can I bring my cosmic consciousness as well as my human consciousness together? And yes, we are also animals, but we are not solely animals, right? How can I satisfy and nourish my animal body, right? My desires and my ferociousness, and how can I pay respect to the parts of me that might feel like might be triggered and it comes up as survival? How can I also honor that and respect that part of my animal nature and bring all of these parts, like my cosmic self, my human self, my animal selves, into greater union within myself? This is something that I continue to learn, that I constantly learn, but something that I feel like every part of my life has led me onto the path of refining this unification, this soul unification work. And as a result, I have learned how to claim my power. As a result, I have learned how to explore my desire. I have learned how to see through shadows and work with my shadow. I have allowed myself to recognize my soul gifts, and while honoring my human mind and using it to in a way that is both nourishing and representative of my feminine, my masculine aspects. So both my analytical mind and my intuitive mind, my strength and my sensitivity, my power in its softness, in its ferociousness, being able to channel my fire in an increasingly sustainable way, and doing leadership and doing life and doing myself in a way that is just more sustainable and that is aligned to what my soul desires to create. This is what empowered feminine leadership is about. It's about leadership that is embodied and not defined simply by status or, external accumulation, which is all fun and great and useful and beautiful in essence on its own. But when used as a replacement and as a way to avoid the feminine aspects of creation, of life, of our energy, we suppress our creativity. We suppress our intuition. We avoid our intuition. We stay in vision and not bring it down into embodied living. We perpetuate the silencing of the feminine voice, which lives both in men and women and children and all things. We perpetuate the silencing and the extortion, the exploitation of the feminine energy and voice and her power through her intuition and her connection to the mysteries. Empowered feminine leadership is about women and some men who feel called, but women and mothers especially, and creative visionaries in leadership, to honor their sensitivity, their power, their intuition, their life force, and to use it for good in the world, starting with themselves. The work that you do when no one's looking, the life that you live behind closed doors, how you face the challenges with grace, how you choose to trust in the mysteries and feminine medicine as a healing balm for where our edges have gotten so rough from generations and generations and generations of spiritual amnesia and overexertion through the masculine force, which has created a lot of imbalances even in men, of course. We start to externalize our power, externalize our pleasure, externalize who we are, our value, externalize meaning. We depend like a hungry ghost, grasping and grasping and grasping at the world outside of ourselves for validation, for power that can be stolen and taken away from us at any time. To pacify the parts and the wounds within us that have accumulated from this life or other lifetimes of forgetting our true essence and true self. And so this work of empowered feminine leadership is multidimensional in nature. It's about the unification of soul with our living physicality, our life. It's not about avoidance. It's not about bypassing. It's about feeling deeply the pain and the suffering within ourselves and within the world, while being able to hold a container of compassion, that's connected to a deep sense of power that is innate, that is sourced from within, So it's a power that cannot be stolen. It cannot be ripped from your hands. And I'm feeling a little bit emotional because I think many of you might feel and know why. So much of our world is suffering. And it's okay to feel the pain of the world. But what are we going to do with that pain? What are we going to do with that anger? What are we going to do with the frustration of the things that doesn't make sense to the wisdom that we are connected to within? That even children access easily, just like that. But adults forget. Well, what we can do is we can take back our power, the power of our relationship, and the control that we have when it comes to how we're choosing to be in relationship with our minds, with our voices, with our bodies, with our sound, with our creation, with our choice, with our energy. We can start acknowledging that we are the creators of our own reality and start with our home of our hearts, the home in our hearts. We can take care of ourselves. Because the greatest teacher and example to the future generations, for those of you that have children, for those of you that are planning to have children, for those of you who are working with children, for those of you just who walk among children, which is all of us, who walk among each other and our own inner children and child and divine nature. The greatest teacher is the frequency in which we are choosing and embodying to live, not the words that we are spreading because we have read information from somewhere or because we believe that it's true, but we fear practicing it on a very, very deep level. One that is free from martyrdom, one that is free from, or increasingly free from survival and free from survival, one that chooses to thrive instead of hold on to the thick guard that we have accumulated, this protective guard between ourselves and the world because of all the atrocities that we see. We have learned how to be strong, but we still fear. We still brace. We still keep an arm's length and distance. We still lock our hearts away from the world, each other, from love in its essence. And we are worlds apart from where we've been, because this strength can take us very far. We can keep building and keep bulldozing through and keep isolated in our own corners as individuals or even as family units or in coupleship from the world. But what happens when we can open our hearts and allow ourselves to blossom in strength, from a strength that is soft because it trusts and it surrenders to something higher, because it trusts more in love than the atrocities and fear. So we move from believing and fighting for love and wisdom. We move from believing and fighting and standing up and protecting love and wisdom. And we continue to do that in a more refined way or in a different way. We move into that and becoming and being and holding the frequency of love, so much so that we don't need to brace and protect and all of that and control. So what are you going to do with everything that you've accumulated, the wisdom, even the emotions, the intensity, the strength, the power, the vision that you have seen? What are you going to do with that? How can we work together and in spaces collectively to transmute this energy, to understand it on a deeper level so that we can use it and channel it in ways in our life personally that can transform our relationship and our health and our well-being to our body, our mind, our body, our mind, our body, our hearts, our energy, our emotions. And that is how I regained my vitality and how I moved from being in a state where I was told by traditional doctors, and I could actually feel that as well, that I had used up my vitality and my chi, and I was, eating into the reserve energy that is reserved for, before death, because of the mental and behavioral habits that I had, and moved into a place of, greater health and vitality and energy and electricity. We can use this energy to transmute and alchemize the debris in our channels and in our being multidimensionally for better health. And we can transform our relationships as well, even the toughest relationships, but don't bank on it, don't hold on it, don't attach yourself to outcome. Start with yourself and let that ripple out, let that overpour out into your life. But that leadership starts with how we lead ourselves and the choices we choose for ourselves. Because this is what we're going to pass on. This is what we're vibrating out into the world. And we can transform life behind closed doors, our family, intimate relationships, our connections, day-to-day, friendships, etc., collaborations with that leadership that is embodied and that honors our intuition and our higher values. Increasingly so, this isn't about perfection, but this is about knowing that we are investing the time and the energy and the commitment and being devoted to that, right? Because what's the point of being angry with the world but not doing anything to contribute to that? And then, and simultaneously so, interchangeably so, leading in the world. And this is how we bring empowered feminine leadership into the world. One that is embodied and lived in every area of our lives. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for listening. And I have some spaces to work with me on a one-to-one basis, mentoring opportunities for creative visionary individuals and leaders, women and mothers in leadership who are looking to do the soul unification work. Simply reach out to me. I have more information in the captions, and you'll see the upcoming events as well in the captions. So be sure to look at that. Remember to hang loose, dive deep, and stay golden, baby. Ciao.